start a fight. They seemed very anxious to make team fights happen and to go for that aggression, and the Kittens exploited that beautifully. But I think we have map number 2 ready, so we're going to take a closer look at where we're going next, since this could already be the last map of this series, and therefore the last map for CE. They need to change something up here, and they go for the first pick once again, as we are seeing the Kittens now with a pick on Cursed Hollow.
An Illidan special, to say the least. And DeadlyKittens, again, they told us we're very macro-focused, and no surprise, they take you to a big battleground, one that you can play around camps to force rotations. You can use globals to force rotations, and you don't necessarily have to engage in a team fight, where we saw DeadlyKittens, I believe the final kill count was 14, so they're no slouch when it comes to team fightings, but they had the advantage a lot of times when those broke out, and they created those opportunities based off of their macro play.
Yeah, that's definitely it, but I would reiterate the point that you made, where it was definitely a draft victory for DeadlyKittens in that series. I'm excited to see what pops up if we get more of this global favor. Even when we talked to DeadlyKittens, they said they specifically were interested in the mass global style that Fnatic was playing a lot of at the Western Clash, and they even said maybe this is our way of being able to stop and defeat a double support style of composition.
Well, for now, once again, we have Stitches being banned out, and I'm really looking towards CE when it comes to playstyle in particular, but also if they change the way that they're attempting to play the map here. Oriel banned once again, and CE now has first pick, as they were the ones giving the map choice away.
You know, DeadlyKittens, to me, I feel like has a couple of fallback options. NSJ and their team, they play a mean Greymane. So if this is, instead of going Genji, you take the Illidan away. I will not be surprised at all if this ends up being like an Uther Greymane or something along those lines, just to put the pressure. Now, that also leaves the door open for your opponent to take the Genji that you just had and failed with.
Yeah, there's the Genji problem. There's potentially an Abathur problem. There is an Uther still available, and I think it's likely if DeadlyKittens want to get some sort of aggressive pick here, like a Greymane or a Genji, that it most likely would want to pair with that Uther, especially since they already have banned an Ariel as well at this point.
I mean, right now, the one good thing that we definitely have for CE is that there's a lot of heroes that combine extremely well with Illidan. You mentioned Abathur, that it could be a choice on the side of the Kittens. If they don't commit to it, we could see it as the hero that really complements Illidan here, as well as, of course, the Tassadar. But for now, we have Uther and Genji taken. So a little bit of a reverse to what we saw in the last game when it comes to the melee assassins, at least.
NSJ's Genji, or no, it's Zace. It's Zace who plays Genji, right? His Genji is so awesome. So I am super pumped to see them get the Genji here. They are the only team I've seen who has consistently taken Dragon Claw, and they get kills with it. So watch out for that.
The thing about DeadlyKittens is the flexibility. And you talked about Zaze, you know, he's played a multitude of roles, but you could also say NSJ, you could fall back to the Greymane, you could fall back to the Li Ming, but it also gives you the availability of Inavir, who can play that Dahaka, can play things like that to fall back on. So you have all the flexibility in the world to counter what CE does. And I think that's one of the very underrated aspects of DeadlyKittens. You know, I've had the pleasure of covering them basically all year when they were split and when they regrouped, and they have such flexibility. You know, we've seen Murr play support and then Warrior and back to support. The flexibility that this team has is unreal, as we see the Abathur does come out to support that Illidan.
Yeah, I like Abathur here. Tassadar can be great on the map as well, especially if you don't need the damage of Archon and can go into the force wall, so you can, in those small corridors, really stop an opponent from either engaging onto you or just chasing him down. But Abathur with the global is just fantastic here, and Illidan is going to be very happy about that, especially, of course, on solo lane potentially. And Tyrael offers so much control, boss plays in particular, after level 16, but already with the Sanctification, you can make so much happen in these fights. If you have the 16er as well, zoning of opponents on Cursed Hollow is absolutely awesome to watch.
Gilly, as it mirrors, CE have to ban Dahaka to get more value out of their Abathur.
Yeah, they definitely want to make sure that they can have the global control. That'll come in even more so once they can get the hunt at level 10, but that makes a great point. If Dahaka doesn't feel pressured to brush talk into a fight, if CE can't force that type of response from DeadlyKittens, then Abathur can't get the same kind of soaking that he would ideally be liking. But this is the ban that I would have liked to see from DeadlyKittens. Banning out of Rhaegar, they're already comboing off of the fact that they banned Ariel. They also picked up Uther, and they're denying this burst heal available to an Illidan.
I know DeadlyKittens wants to play global, but with Illidan off the board, Abathur off the board, Dahaka off the board. I really am not a big fan of Falstads against Illidan's. It makes Falstad's job almost impossible to try and push lanes because of the threat of the hunt, and then Illidan just stays on you. I'd actually be okay if Deadly Kittens wants to play more of the team fighting role that we've seen them do in the past, whether that leads to a Gray main here, whether it leads to a Lee Ming, things like that. So Deadly Kittens, you know, we'll see what direction they go with these next 2 picks.
Yeah, when you try to play a Falstad against an Illidan, you definitely have to change the way that you approach the game. Staying on the solo lane is just an invitation for Illidan to hunt you down and take you apart. You can bait Illidan to an extent in team fights if he feels too comfortable just simply hunting into you. If you time it well, you can get a good gust off and isolate him from the rest of the team, so that is a potential to take him down. But no good Illidan is going to take this bait. So Falstad isn't really worth it in that setup, since if you already need to use him as a sustained damage dealer in team fights, you have a much better matchup heading into Avala, for example. But
this
for now,
is new for Deadly Kittens. It's new for them to play the double support, so they are making adjustments into the tournament meta as they see what works for the team, and it does show also how much emphasis they've placed on globals, that they want to make sure that they still have some sort of global hero for them.
Got some super secret info. Talked to them a little bit before we started. I knew this double support would be coming. They're like, look, they've switched me off this role. I got a feeling it's going to be Inavir on the Brightwing, Murrah on the Uther, so potentially going to be seeing that, a little bit of change, and that does give you the global. It also gives you the Illidan counter, things like that, but they ended up falling back to the Lee Ming. I actually really like what Deadly Kittens is doing. They're doing what they've been practicing. They are doing what they've known as tried and true in the past, so I like a lot of what I see out of Deadly Kittens draft so far.
from the idea behind it, we have pretty much a reverse here. The double resets now on the other side, and the Illidan composition for CE. The surrounding parameters are not quite the same, but if you look at what the idea behind the drafts is, double support with resets on the side of the Kittens, and then now you have Illidan with Greymane and Karazim even trying to help them out. Karazim, of course, with the Palm has the potential to keep Illidan alive with the panic button here. And he also synergizes really well with Abathur, so there's a lot of heroes on that setup that work quite well with Abathur. It also could be used as a copy. And Deadly Kittens, they round their own draft out with Arthas as an additional counter against Illidan.
Yeah, I wondered if that would be an Anubarak pick because of the Karazim potential counter trying to deny the double resets of Lee Ming and Genji. But in this case, they, being Deadly Kittens, feel it's more important that they have the attack speed slows, the control that Arthas can provide, as well as the little bit of physical armor that he has.
Yeah, and I really wondered whether that would be the Arthas or potentially the Muradin. Muradin does give you another form of crowd control against some of those dive heroes, but it also gives you the ability to have mobility. And that's the thing. We talked about it. We just mentioned it. Tyrael has that holy ground post 16. Arthas can't walk through it, but I know somebody that can jump over, and that's Muradin. So Muradin gives you that added control. It does help you sustain both those tanks, very beefy. So I like the Arthas pickup. Wondered if it might have been Muradin, but either way, we have our draft.
I'm really curious for this one. CE needs to win if they want to force the third map and if they want to stay in this tournament. The Kittens on the right side in red, playing the double support with Uther Brightwing. We see them with resets on Lee Ming and, of course, Genji. And up at their front line, it's that Arthas.
And is on the left, it's going to be CE fighting for their tournament lives here, trying to stay alive against the Deadly Kittens, your SEA representative. So we've got SEA versus China. I don't think anybody would have said China would be the first team to go out here.
I mean, China has the visa problem that we've been highlighting quite a lot, so that definitely is it's not only an issue of you all of a sudden being weaker, but it's also like a mentality. If every single tournament that you want to attend, you're running in these problems, then it's definitely playing some tricks on you. But I have to agree with you. The Kittens, how they played and presented themselves on map number 1, I don't really think a lot of people expected it. And CE, in my eyes, has now a chance to redeem themselves for their performance on Dragonshire, since it was definitely not what I expected after watching them go up against Tempest.
This early game setup is quite interesting. They're relying on Abathur to get a lot of value. And when you look at the team, Lee Ming does a lot of damage, but she doesn't necessarily have that anti-siege potential. The same can be said about early Genji. And you do damage, and you do great damage, especially late game, but you don't have that anti-siege. So I'm actually a little bit curious about why CE was so willing to drop back from that. Obviously, Abathur can only do so much, but they're going to try and put the pressure somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how team fights later on go, because there's a lot of potential on both sides here, depending on execution. But especially with Kittens, having the potential to go into Storm as well, after 16 in particular, they are looking extremely powerful. Having a Divine Storm available, the Benediction Double Stun, Polymorph, they have so many tools with which they can control Illidan and also Greymane. Greymane, by the way, heading into the Cocktail build. We've seen a lot of the Worgen form build earlier, trying to just get those extra stacks on the Wizen Duelist, and that was especially what we've seen from the Korean team.
The Hong Kono special is what I think we're going to call that throwback to some old Dami play there. But again, you know, we see that pressure. They've opted to put a little bit more into that top lane. You know, that's definitely something we're probably going to keep our eye on. Nice polymorph. But Zaze, I actually saw on the minimap, he used that dash in, and he was way on the other side, and against the Greymane and Illidan, a little bit surprised, and he is going to be first blood of the game.
Now, CE a little bit more aggressive than at the start of this game, but again, later on, this is going to be the crucial point. For now, both of the teams are awaiting the spawn of the first tribute, and that means, of course, again, that you are going straight for your Siege Giant camp. RNG plays a bit of a role here, and in this case, it is the DeadlyKittens that get the better spawn. Their Siege Giant camp is going to have a much easier time pushing through that bot lane, so CE is either in a situation where they have to be willing to give up the top tribute, or they need to somehow rotate someone down and deal with the Siege Giants if they don't want to lose infrastructure.
Ooh, Wind taking a bit of damage, and Zay is forced to get out of there. Wind, however, is not going to matter, as Brightwing is actually the first to fall. So right now, CE taking the fight to them. You can see Genji still trying to find some way to be effective. He, again, as this game goes on, will become far more effective. And Caldor, you talked about the Dragon Claw.
Yeah, Gilly talked about Dragonclaw in particular.
Yeah,
that
Gilly,
that
yeah,
is
sorry.
actually something where they can get a couple
You're
of
one and the
kills
same.
in. And we have seen the talent actually. Yeah, my hair is very, very shiny today. You're right. Easy to mix up. But Dragonclaw can actually be a fantastic talent. We have seen that a bit in Europe, more on an experimental side. There's still other builds that dominate a lot more. But as Gilly said, DeadlyKittens, they really like to use it. And we still are fighting over the tribute, by the way, with Abathur just solely trying to somehow defend against the Siege Giants at the bot lane, and at the same time lending support material. There was no support that could keep him alive. The explosion does some damage, but just simply not enough to help CE get a counter kill.
My favorite part about that was Eldruins went in early, and it's just like you saw that glowing sword sitting there, and we saw DeadlyKittens start to move back a little bit, and they hovered around that. And Tyrael said, I don't want you to get this, and he ended up getting punished for it.
Yeah, also with the level 4s right now, Abathur is completely focusing on the support build here. He wants to make sure that they have just the extra attack speed, get the extra range and the cooldown reduction on one. So it's really all focused on the 13 and 16 talent in particular, which will allow also Illidan to stay alive a little bit longer. And as you already just pointed out here, we have actually some really interesting changes on the side of Kerosene, which I personally did not expect here on level 4.
It's not something we see too often. A lot of times, you know, you kind of go into that, the one that gives you the block, that physical armor type deal. But when you look at the fact that you've got a Genji and a Li Ming, it kind of pulls you away from that. It doesn't necessarily, in the air ally, you don't necessarily need that vision, so you go with the third option.
Yeah, so they're going in this case straight for the heals with the Spirit ally. Normally you would expect Earthal to be taken here, but they're not so much worried now about the heroic basic attacks. So just the additional heal, and also preparing for the potential triple dash then later on. Mule on Abathur. Yeah, Mule on Abathur now also claimed, so we are going to see them try and keep those structures alive a little bit longer. But I like the individual talent adjustments that we see. We have the Hand of Protection on the side of Uther, dealing mainly with Illidan, but also, of course, taking the potential of Hunt away, which we didn't really expect here. But talking about that Illidan and those fights, Greymane is the first one to go down, as Illidan is trying to get a counter kill, but that's not happening. The Kittens, again, looking at a potential second tribute, and they get the channel through.
They had a few hiccups early, but they seem to be picking up paces. They've gotten the last 2 kills. Good coordination there. And Caldor, you know, first 2 tributes we had at the top middle and the top right, which means the next tribute in sets of 3 will be at the bottom left. And they've got Brightwing as their global, so they might look to try and stall that out. play the level 10 game, and then look to turn a fight. It's all about how DeadlyKittens plays that. They should have enough teams, both teams should have enough time to get level 10, but it's all a matter of how do the globals factor into this leading into that third tribute.
Yeah, the level 10s are definitely going to change everything here, especially when we're talking about the hunt, as you already said. Globals are going to be huge. But also, for CE, it's important to note that with them playing the Abathur composition, they need level 10 to finally get the fight with a copy on Abathur. It's the one thing that they don't have, that 5th hit point pool in these fights. So copies are going to be extremely important. But the Kittens have 2 tributes, and now the tribute is spawning. But it should just be enough for CE to get to 10 so that they can finally fight on, well, and even an eye level, I would say.
I love the fact that they managed to go force the issue middle, take a structure, which gives you a little bit more of that net XP, but it also thwarts DeadlyKittens away. They don't have to contest this. NSJ actually going in a little bit far. The hunt is going to go in. The cleanse onto NSJ is not going to do enough. And now they're continuing the chase as Murr starts to take a bit more damage.
Great sanctification as well. Uther goes down as the cocktail hits home. Well done. And at the same time, we saw Karazim channel the tribute through. So CE, once they hit 10, they turn up the aggression. They go in with Illidan. They get the kill. Tyrael is protecting everything with his ult. And that was extremely well executed. The cocktail build and claiming another victim. And C is now trying to use that momentum to go straight for the boss. But of course, the Kittens already sniffing it out and trying to go for the counterplay to the top right.
Yeah, they recognize that. Any good team will recognize that. And it's the good versus great teams. If you see a little bit of hesitation, you don't make that call instantly. You might give up a little bit more, but both teams making the proper call here. Again, post level 10, any Abathur comp is going to look far different, especially when you have the clone potential of either Illidan or the Greymane.
Now, there's also a few other things that I wanted to point out as we're speaking about talents. When we look against Tyrael, then on level 7, we have now the Angel's Grace. So it's really all about momentum and speed for them. So every single time that you use Eldraune's Might, you get another 40% movement speed for 3 seconds. So when we're talking chase potential with Illidan and Greymane and potentially the slow and 16 from Abathur, you also have to figure now in that Tyrael is just going to run you down.
He's going to look to do that, but we are going to have our first 5-on-5 team fight post 10. Enderveer starting the channel, but we see Paradise coming on the backside. The cocktail splashes through there, but the stun, and now Zay's trying to go in for the kill.
And at the same time, the interrupt as Wind is going in with Tyrael. Here comes the copy, double Greymane as they are moving in, but already Army of the Dead has been popped. The kill against Greymane, and it's not only him that falls, it's Illidan that gets destroyed a second later because Tyrael is too slow on the sanctification. The Kittens with a double kill, and this one hurt.
That hurt a lot. As we're going to see Enderveer, he's going to go ahead and hearth back to try and clear up that boss. But that is going to be our first curse of the game. As Abathur's moved to the top, you know, we're going to have this bottom fort exposed. This boss going to get a bit more value since they were able to capture that tribute to get the curse.
Yeah, this is definitely going to hurt a lot now with the curse, also pushing CE even farther back. Noteworthy is also that when we're talking about Arthas, who in this fight put out huge pressure against those melee heroes, he didn't go into the frozen wastes on level 4 that we usually expect here. So there's no quest talent for him. Instead, we're having the IC talents now taken. So the added attack speed that we sometimes now see. And yeah, the adjustments that we have on both sides actually super interesting here. I think the 13 that we have for CE now is actually pretty strong for them, on Abathur in particular, since now whoever he is going to head with the symbiote, it has way more survivability thanks to so much transference. And even Karazim is speccing into the survivability thanks to the spell shield.
Enderveer, and I think that speaks to a little bit of the unfamiliarity with the hero and knowing against who you're going with. We saw the Emerald win, but Tyrael was able to use the Eldruins to get out.
I mean, look at the situation they're in. We just saw around the tribute a fight that resulted in a double kill against CE and a curse taken while Boss was still pushing the lane. And after all is said and done, CE hasn't had any experience.
It's a weird thing. It's a very weird thing. They were able to clear up the lane, then they were able to defend middle, and there wasn't a whole lot more value you could get out of bottom. So by having Abathur trying to hit that soak in that top lane with it pushed all the way forward, the rest of your team middle, yes, you gave up the bottom fort, but the fact that DeadlyKittens recognizes the hunt as a thing, a clone as a thing, the Abathur hat as a thing, you can't exactly push that lane out much further than that fort.
Yeah, it's really impressive by CE to still be in a position where they can fight whenever they want on even talents and even claw their way towards level 16 a little bit faster. The Kittens have to be careful now, especially with the extra survivability that is added thanks to Abathur's level 16 talent. That is going to be a little bit rougher in the fights. If you can't control Illidan and Greymane, then you are in trouble. But it's, of course, the resets, again, that the Kittens are really looking for.
Illidan is standing in the bush near the top. He's looking for an opportunity. If DeadlyKittens continues to posture up, he's just trying to look to see if he can get that hunt out. Instead, he recognizes it's not a fight they can take. But now Wind, he's sitting there. You can see that CE is trying to find the way. They recognize the retreat point is a little bit too close for comfort, so they're going to go. Instead, DeadlyKittens starting to go up as we see the Emerald Wind has pushed Paradise out again, but can they get the follow-up as now DeadlyKittens starting to join the fray?
Sanct is being used. Here comes the hunt, not getting a lot of value, but at the same time, the rest of the team rotated in. Copy is being used once again on Greymane as they're trying to engage onto Stronger, popping the army of the dead and retreating immediately. They're starting to drop in hit points, and once again, we have CE chasing
All the way to the fort, recognizing you can't go any bit further. So nicely done there. We're going to trade a few heroics in the middle of that. But now Zuyu on that clone will go forward. Sometimes it's a matter of, do you want to put the pressure on, or do you want to give up that clone experience, or should you have backed out?
And now talking about the clone, this just means once again that you have to give up a tribute. Since the cooldown was used, the Kittens moved back, and now CE is sitting there saying, well, boys, that didn't work out. Tribute just spawned, so I guess we give it up.
Well, it's not the worst thing in the world. Again, they still have the experience advantage. They still have that one big team fight potential. When you have this, you have the Abathur, the Greymane, the Illidan. All it takes is one team fight to open this wide open. All it takes is one curse late game with this composition to just change the makeup of how the map looks. And then late game Abathur, we know, does wonders. So we'll see as this game continues to play out. And 16 picked up here for CE.
16 is ready, and they have half a level. They could even use that to try and make a play if Illidan starts with the hunt and they engage into a fight. Also noteworthy that both bosses are now on the map. And the Kittens, they don't have vision. They could actually falsely think that there might be a play for boss at that bot lane, but they saw them sneaking around, so they kind of know what's up. Alpha Killer also picked up. And again, Abathur, with a talent that we already saw a little bit earlier today, going for the area of effect damage on the clone.
That one actually surprises me a little bit more. Maybe he's anticipating getting that slow, getting all of that off of the Tyrael, trying to land that. But furthermore, we also see Kharazim not going into the cleansing touch. So, you know, we're seeing just these crazy, crazy talent choices, but they all seem to be trying to counter the enemy team.
I mean, if you go for the way of 100 fists, that's actually really strong if you want to put in the single target damage. And he can really jump in right now, with Abathur in particular, and apply pressure. So this is a talent that at least in Europe we see quite frequently when Kharazim is played. But the volatile mutation on Abathur is really something new. And that AoE damage is going to be interesting in those fights. Once again, here comes the engage, and immediately we have a kill against Greymane, not protected by Tyrael's ult, was not in the Sank, and Zaze is just chipping away the entire time with his Genji. He is out for blood in these battles.
He's going to town. You got to wonder how this split approach from CE, they just don't seem to be on the same page. As Zaze continuing to go in, Brightwing is going to shift in as well. Now with Greymane down and the clone down, this is presumably a 5 versus 3, making this boss call a lot easier to make for DeadlyKittens. And you got to wonder, with the Tyrael, will they be willing to commit to the defense, or are they going to have to drop back?
I mean, right now, oh
no.
My god, Wind goes down, and this is horrible. The palm triggers. He's trying to escape it with the help of Paradise and is able to move out, but with Tyrael down, you have no chance to make a boss play at all. You could try and make it happen with a 16 on Tyrael, maybe
gotta have
with
a little bit more
ground,
help than that to start.
but not if you're taken out immediately. But then again, the Kittens recognized, okay, this is a problem. Tyrael might become an issue. Let's push this out a little bit further. And when they saw him, they saw they had a chance to take him down and kill him. And that's what they did.
Yeah, this is a really curious position because you have the global of Brightwing, depending on where the next tribute is going to spawn. That top lane was opened up by the first boss. Now you have the potential of boss curse, which could be game-ending potential. And so you are in a very risky spot right now if you're CE. How hard? And I think this is actually a very good position for CE to have a defense, but this is tough.
I would have loved if the Kittens would have slowed this down a little bit. If you push out with the heroes that you have and provide the vision, you could have timed the boss a little bit better. It's still great for them, but I think they could have maximized the value even more if they played that safe. But it is a big fight over the tribute, and this is the problem for CE now. They have to force the fight and have to win it, but the copy is already running low here. Aloof Fool with the rest of the team. Shy already on the channel, attempting to get it. Nice also, as they're zoning them out with a holy ground, but it is Li Ming with the interrupt.
The longer this stalls out, the more value that boss is going to get through, and it's going to go through that keep as we see Zaze trying to get in. The Dragon Blade is out there looking for the fight, but Winded team, they go in. Sanctification's down. They have to try and take this fight. Innovator is going to use the ice block and force the team away, but he will go down, and Arthas goes down as well.
Double kill, and it's a triple as Li Ming falls to CE, bringing the pain and bringing the fight there, going for Uther, likely to get him. Uther, no chance of survival here, especially with Illidan using Abathur as well to drop him as quickly as possible. That's the second tribute in this game that CE was finally able to get, but during all of this, the boss went through the wall, and this is really the moment when that level 7 pick on Abathur is worth so much. If you can save the keep now, thanks to Abathur and the Mule, that's just gold.
Caldor, look at this all of a sudden. We've got 19 going on 20, full level lead. If you can play the 20 game, your next tribute, if you're on the side of CE, is a curse. And with 2 forts down, you can now start to look to put the pressure on. This looks like an entirely different game, and exactly what you just said. Your top keep is going to look a lot healthier here in the next few minutes.
Now, when we talk about the last team fight, I would really like for the Kittens to play a bit more around the fort that they had there. But I honestly feel that one of the problems that CE has been having this entire game is you can see that there is just a disconnect between the original team and their new player Shy. Greymane, whenever they engaged, just wasn't really on the same page. The fight over the tribute at the bot lane, for example, was very reminiscent of that, because you had Tyrael going in with everyone else onto the Sanct, and the only one that was caught in the back was Greymane, and he died again early on, so that was a massive problem. That didn't really happen in the last team fight, so they're starting to switch the calls up a little bit to put Shy into a position where he's more comfortable, and it works out. Now they have 20, now they have the curse, and all of a sudden CE is looking extremely strong and powerful when it comes to the keep to the top lane.
I'll say this, is that camps were picked up by DeadlyKittens for the middle and bottom lane, so those lanes are now protected, but Brightwing is still trying to soak 20, and if you get one pick here if you're CE, you're now looking at game-ending potential because you have the Greymane, because you have the diving Illidan, and right now they are taking full advantage of this 20-tier advantage, and Caldor, it looks like they're starting to posture up on the core.
They have to wait for the copy on Abathur. That's going to be the telltale here right now. The Kittens with a push at the bot lane, but they're still an entire level away. 20 seconds remaining on the cursor. CE is starting to push in even heavier, but they're not fully committed yet.
It's a risky call, Caldor. I don't know if they can do it, but they are going in. They have committed. There's the copy onto the Illidan, and they're going in. Sanctification's down. The core starting to fall. 70, 60, 50. It is going down rapidly right now, Caldor. Shy, however, is going to fall. 30%, 10%. That is going to be enough to end the game here as CE turns this game around to even up the series 1-1.
CE takes the second game and is able to win it. Having a lot of problems still with their coordination, but in the end victorious in the one team fight that really mattered. The one at the top and bosses were taken. They take down their opponent, and from that on can snowball it, get the curse, defend. Abathur has, of course, the Mule. Gilly, what do you think about the game?
Abathur keeping them in the game was huge for CE. They had a lot of problems, and in fact, the replay that I'm going to show in a little bit is the big problem they had, which is that they had a lot of melee people, and it made it very hard for them to be able to delay tributes. But later on, they realized that they needed to use Sanctification and fully commit together, and when they made that adjustment, that's that one team fight, and it's all it took.
Literally one team fight changed everything about that game. That is Heroes of the Storm in a nutshell, is that you're never out of it until your core is down, and you're never really out of it if your keep is still alive because of Mule.
I really feel that the coordination was so much better in that last team fight, because the one before, as we said, Sank goes down, everybody commits, and Shy is like, wait, we're going in? And at that moment, he's already dead and the fight's over. But talking about fights, we have a replay and we're going to take a close look at it. Gilly, you have something prepared for us.
Yeah, so again, this is the difficulty of having a lot of melee heroes. First thing to note is Stronger's amazing positioning up in the front. He's trying to zone. Wind is going to go in here. The cocktail is used, and once that's it, that's really the main range and way of dealing and stopping a tribute, which forces Wind to come in, and he takes a lot of damage. This happened twice, where DK, DeadlyKittens, were right on the money watching for Wind when he was going to have to jump in to get the next delay after Eldruin's Might. That made him where he was really low. He had to go all the way up toward the top, needed to Eldruin in for the Sanctification, but Emerald Wind pushed everyone out of the way to actually be able to get into the Sanctification and stay saved. Later on, once CE realized that they needed to adapt, they needed to be the ones to initiate with Sanctification, they took out Brightwing so low that, yes, she ice blocked and she got Emerald Wind off, but she died just as
like
she was
10%,
Emerald winning.
yeah.
So once they made that adaptation, that was all it took for them, and having that Abathur to keep them in the game was really the best part of it.
Yeah, I would definitely agree on the Abathur part, because without him and him constantly soaking and keeping them on eye level in experience and even surpassing their opponent, that fight would never have been possible, because thanks to the kill count alone, it looked like the Kittens would just run away in experience, get the extra talent, but Abathur kept them in a situation where they could force a fight on even talent, say like, guys, one more fight, this is the one chance that we need, and they made it count.
It really seemed to me that, this is the DeadlyKittens that they're evolving into, evolving being one of the key components of that last game. But, they put Inavir onto that Brightwing, and we saw a couple of Emerald Winds that went out that might not have been optimal in a couple of situations. We saw a lot of damage go out, good ice block. He has the fundamentals there, but as a team, sometimes it's not, I say this about Medivh teams, right? It's not always about individual talent and can I play Medivh. It's can your team play Medivh? Can your team play around the double support and it's double true support? You have the global. Were they forced into that global because of the Dahaka denial? Things like that. And I think that things in the draft might have got a little bit lost for DeadlyKittens in the long run, despite it looking good on paper. Was that their identity?
There was one other moment that I think DeadlyKittens will kind of be kicking themselves at when they go back and look at that game. And it's such a small thing, but they did not have 10, and NSJ moved forward to Magic Missile to stop a tribute. They lost him, and then they lost the boss. And these are small things, but that one tribute, not being patient, ended up costing them later on, because that third tribute in the curse is ultimately where things spiraled out of control.
Especially since with their own curse, they never really got as much value as they wanted
Exactly.
to. The lanes pushed in, but thanks to Abathur double soaking, there was no experience lost on the side of CE. And even with the curse, we still had CE had any experience because of that.
The moment right before that happened, CE recognized that 10 was a thing. Brightwing was staying at the top. They forced the Siege Giants up there to lock Brightwing in place, and there was a whole lot around there. They took one tower. One tower was all it took, that mid lane. They recognized they had the advantage. They went in, they took the tower, they got right back out. And that was that small sliver of experience that allowed just moments, seconds matter in this game, and that was a brilliant call by CE. Huge credit to them.
Yeah, those small moments are what that game came down to, a lot of those small moments. But again, the big deal for me is the adaptation that CE had in team fights. That was everything for them, that the one fight in the late game that mattered, they were able to make the adaptation, take out Brightwing, and win it to send us to game 3.
I'm really also interested in, like, a few of the builds and the adjustments that they made here were really interesting to me. Again, we saw Abathur with a 16. It's basically a burning rage on your copy that you have, and they really prioritize it extremely highly. And I actually think that our map is ready for the third game. And